The recent mass shooting in Catawba County, North Carolina, is somewhat of a head-scratcher. You have a pool party in a fairly swank neighborhood that for about a half hour you'd swear the town had elected a Democratic mayor. Black Lives Matter supporters the world over got on their hands and knees and prayed. They prayed for the victims. They prayed for the victims' families. Well, actually, they didn't. They prayed with all the spirit in their bodies to the Most High that the shooters would turn out to be white. So catching the suspects proved far less important than identifying their races. And this posed a problem for race hustlers like Richard Taylor. I mean, the area is lily white, upscale, Mayberry. But to Richard, the senselessness and poor aim of the shooters set off alarm bells that perhaps the culprits were of the gangland variety. Now, most of us don't care about the races. We know that all races are capable of senseless violence. But this incident was classified as a mass shooting, supposedly the dominion of whiteys. It's not, but that's for another day. Now, Richard may have the brains of a toad, but even a toad gets a good idea once in a while, and so he managed to string together enough neurons to formulate a plan in case the gunmen were his brothers. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With cold, blunt analysis cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's time for the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
A bit later, I'm going to play a video that Richard published before anyone was arrested for the shootings. However, let's start by showing a news clip of actual arrests.
Inside a Cataba County courtroom packed with nearly 20 deputies Friday, 5 suspects faced a judge, each charged in connection with the mass shooting at a Walnut Acres pool party that left 1 dead and 11 others hurt. Among the suspects, 19-year-old Keandre Mack. His mother, Kendra, spoke with us before the hearing.
All I want is for justice to be served. If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. But
all you want is justice to be served. If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. What does that even mean? Doesn't even sound like justice if it's wrong.
But every child deserves to be heard.
We couldn't bring cameras inside the courtroom today, but we're inside as the DA read the charges. Max accused of attempted first-degree murder. Prosecutors say he confessed to firing his entire magazine into the crowd.
Okay, so you fire an entire magazine into the crowd, and you have 3 other gunmen that were involved in it. They're shooting, and you have 1 dead victim. Yep, this sounds like a gangland shooting. So here are the people that they have arrested so far. Apparently, those in the two-tone pool party, shoot 'em up gang, resembled members of the Specials more than the Proud Boys or Crips. Now, I don't know to what extent each of these guys had in the shootings of people, and they're innocent until proven guilty. We'll have to wait to find out. But let's go over and see what Richard Taylor has to say.
As you see this happen in Catawba County, which is on the western part of the state, near Hickory, which is, has its own issues as well.
What he's saying is Ku Klux Klan. Okay.
But this apparently happened at what they're calling a pool party, and a lot of high school attendants were present. And so this leads me to believe that it may have been some sort of graduation celebration, graduation party.
Wait, that makes sense. What's going on? Has Agent Blind Squirrel got something correct?
And I'm going out on a limb here. And I would venture that this was some sort of Airbnb that somebody rented out, and cats got to shooting. Now, once again, Hickory and Catawba, I don't know the racial demographic of that. I would presume or assume it's, majority white. But once again, don't shoot the messenger. If I'm wrong, we'll find out later. But I would assume that this was a party full of black people.
Now, if you or I said something like that, what do you think we would be called? But you have to wonder, why is he trying to lay the blame on his brothers? Because he thinks they did it. And he's just trying to get in front of the narrative in case it turns out to be.
black kids, black teenagers, young black adults. Now, once again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to tell you why I assume that. Now, they're trying to paint this as a mass shooting, which I would, beg to differ. I would disagree with that because this is not a mass shooting. This is just a house party where a lot of Negroes got shot. I'm going to say it like that. A lot of people got shot.
Just in case the shooters turn out to be black, they can't be accused of a mass shooting. No, sir. This was not a mass shooting, even though 12 people got shot. Why is it not a mass shooting? Because black people got shot. That doesn't qualify. And you can tell by looking up the actual definition, which states that a mass shooting is an incident in which 4 or more non-black people are shot or killed, not including the non-black shooter.
It wasn't just a mass shooting that where somebody just walked into the party shooting at everybody. They said the identity of the shooter or the shooters is not known, which once again, I beg to differ that too, because when everybody's at a party, 100 people, somebody pull out a gun, everybody know who the shooters is around town.
With no basis for his belief, Richard assumes that the shooters must have been some of the partygoers, because the partygoers were black. We are starting to see another one of his strategies for responding to future arrests if they turn out to be black. Because he thinks this will turn out to be a gangland slaying, he doesn't want us to make a big deal out of it. He doesn't feel the horror of what took place because he thinks that these shootings are just a fact of life. I mean, words were said, and pulling out guns and spraying the crowd down like you spray beer on the chests of drunken co-eds during spring break is just expected. But Richard is not out of tricks, as you'll soon see.
Everybody know who got beat. So I would venture to say that 2 gentlemen, 3 or 4, or somebody from the other side, as they call them, ops, whatever the case may be, got into it. They start shooting, gunfire up. 9 times out of 10, if you're 18, 19, 20, or even 25, most of these cats don't know how to shoot to hit a target. So they're just shooting and shooting and shooting. And, unfortunately, there was a lot of people outside and a lot of people got hit. And there's a scripture, Proverbs 3:31 says, "Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose not his ways."
Do you see where he's going? If you don't, it will soon be clear. For the next couple of minutes, pay attention to the passive language he uses to describe black-on-black violence.
Another version says, "Do not envy a violent man, or choose any of his ways."
Any of his ways. Gee, I wonder who he's referring to. Well, you'll find out.
And I bring that scripture up because this has been a common occurrence in black parties, black clubs, black gatherings, black cookouts throughout the diaspora for many years. Actually, right outside of my hometown in Smithfield, Selma, there was a party at the quote-unquote hideout where gunfire erupted in the club and outside of the club after a fight. 2 or 3 years ago, right in my hometown of Goldsboro, North Carolina, there was a similar incident just like this where a lot of high school students rented an Airbnb, had a pool, they was having a pool party, broad daylight, shots rang out, 6 people got hit, 1 young lady lost her life, and no one has still been brought to justice for that.
When it comes to shootings involving black people, the gunfire just erupts. Shots just ring out. These are just mere occurrences. No one pulls the trigger. No one shoots anyone else. This word choice shows you how he's trying to diminish the trauma associated with one person shooting another. Now, I wonder if he did the same thing for Dylan Roof. Shots just ring out inside his church, and gunfire just erupted, and it was just an occurrence.
Now, they tried to call that a mass shooting. Unfortunately, this does not characterize as a mass shooting. However, when we engage in that behavior, meaning envy of the ways of our oppression,
Do you see it yet?
using guns, shooting guns, taking on the mentality of the gun, kill, 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 destroy life, destroy life, destroy life, then we are being able to be put in that same category.
That's right. If we go out and we shoot up a whole bunch of people, we could end up being mischaracterized as mass shooters. We don't want that. Do you see the harm that these shooters are doing? They're making it look like black people might actually engage in mass shootings once in a while, and that's our big concern here.
You hear mass shooters, what do you think about? You think about the guy who just shot up Florida State. You think about the guy in, Virginia Tech. You think about the Columbine shooters. You think about all of these other mass shooters that just come and spray up people intentionally with the express purpose of taking innocent lives.
We can't characterize the shootings in Catawba County as mass shootings because the shooters didn't mean any serious harm. They were just engaging in normal gang activity. That's exactly what he's saying. But we already knew that angle. Hang on.
This, I believe, is not that. So I'm going to refute or rebut that label that they're putting it on, but we all have to take some accountability to what we do as a people. Now, mind you, I'm talking about a shooting that happened in Smithfield, Selma just last night at a club. I don't think anybody was hit. This one in Catawba, and it's probably maybe 100 other club activities where black people are at that got shot or got shot up last night.
Again, he's not telling you about all these other shootings involving black people because he's acknowledging that they, along with all other races, engage in extremely violent behavior. Again, all races do this. He's trying to normalize it. This happens all the time. I mean, nothing new here. We shouldn't make a big deal out of it if the shooters happen to be black, because that would be like gang slayings, and gang slayings are normal. That's his argument.
I'm just taking a stab at the wind, and you let me know what you think in the comments. But that, once again, has to do with us as a people. Why is it that when we get together, whether it's, parties, clubs, why does there always have to be violence? And
Holy cow. It seems that Richard is pointing the guilt finger at his fellow black people here. I guess we had him all wrong. Yeah, well, you weren't paying attention throughout the video because Richard is gearing up for his third tactic just in case the shooters are black.
I will contend, as the scripture says, we have chosen the ways of our oppressor.
It's Whitey's fault. Even when we shoot each other, it's only because we're emulating the Caucasian race. Don't believe me? Hang on.
We have chosen the ways of a violent man. You think about back in, the glory days of Africa. We had wars, they had fights, but they fought hand to hand, close combat. They had spears and knives.
Yep, during the glory years of Africa. When would that be? But in these glory years, tribal battles were fought like Westside Story if the movie had been set in the Congo. And instead of switchblades, they used stones and spears and fists. You can imagine Dr. Livingston remarking to Henry Stanley, "Did you hear that? It sounds like the Falcons and the Mambas are preparing to engage in fisticuffs. I think we're in for a bloody rumble." What he's describing as gangs of New Tanzania.
You know what I'm saying? They was, we was agile with it. But what happened? The white man came to Africa with the gun, laid everything down. Now, we have taken that same gun, that same approach, and to take mass life. And, we all know about the Chicago and, all of the other violent places, the 80s game banging and all that stuff. We have taken on that character, and I think that's something that we need to disband from, where we can't go and have a gathering. We can't. Now, once again, I may, if I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong. Maybe this was a group of white people, and, they got to shooting at each other. I don't know, but y'all let me know if y'all think that I'm on the right track or the wrong track in the comments.
You're never on the right track, dude.
right? But rest in peace to the young lady that lost their life. Just look at this scene. I'm gonna show you some of the scene, and y'all let me know. Now, this is the overhead scene. Now, once again, this looks like a very prominent neighborhood.
Yeah, that does look like a pretty prominent neighborhood.
But you do see cars all parked across the lawn, parked in a lot of ways. Cars in the driveway, the drive part. There you see the parking lot littered with bullets. So this looks to be a very prominent area. Now, once again, I would hope it's not our kind that went out in them people property and acting like that, but I think I did see a young brother walking around there.
He's hoping that the shooters were not of his kind. It's good that he has his priorities straight. Never mind the human suffering. That's not a big deal. What was the race of the shooters? That's what he's worried about. And notice that he's watching this to see if he can find black people in the video. That's how fixated he is on race.
So yeah, there's a young brother. I don't know who he is, but this is the overhead scene. Now, look at this neighborhood; it's very prominent. Don't look too hood, but there is a big pool party. So that may be the location of an Airbnb. But once again, this just happened earlier this morning, Sunday morning, and that's why. I don't go out, even though I don't drink and things like that. But you got to realize, too, that when you're drinking, there's something called spirits. Spirits. That's why they call it spirituous liquor. Liquor brings on spirits. It turns people into different people. It brings on a little aggression, a little violence, a little demonic possession. Hence the term spirits. It changes your spirit. I've literally watched people in my sobriety. We were talking and they start drinking. I watched them literally transform into another human being.
If you think they literally transformed into another human being, then I'd have to ask how much you had to drink.
And that's what alcohol does. It's all good in moderation, or to celebrate, whatever. As the scripture says, eat, drink, and be merry. But of course, that is how, what it say, as it was in the days of Noah, that shall it be in the last days. People are eating, drinking, and get married. Then destruction and calamity come. So this is what we have. Once again, shout out. And they said 11 other people are in critical condition or serious condition. So that means that maybe they're not out of the woods yet, but. We're going to get more information on this story, but I would declare that it is not a mass shooting if, from what, I can ascertain by the sheer, situational factors that were given. I think, once again, it was just a pool party. Somebody came through. Somebody had some beef. Somebody slept with somebody's girl. Somebody stepped on somebody's shoe. A little alcohol, little guns involved, and there you have it. But we have to remember that
there were 4 gunmen. There were 12 people shot. This isn't someone upset over losing a girlfriend or having his shoe stepped on. This isn't simply someone getting too drunk. But whatever. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.